AI isn't just a tool, it's a whole new kind of intelligence. It's really good at connecting human ideas, but it does so in a totally different way. Today, I'm going to explain how Ethan Mollick's co-intelligence answered 5 of my big questions about AI and how we can all start using it better today. Speaking of doing things in a new way, I'm in a different state at the moment, so that's why the space looks a little bit different, but it's still the same Busy Book Club. And if you're new to Busy Book Club, welcome. My name is Mike, and every day we read a chapter of new and interesting books. And today we are wrapping up Co-Intelligence by Ethan Mollick, and we're going to revisit the 5 questions that I asked at the beginning of the book. But before that, I want to offer some thoughts. My favorite thing about this book continues to be that it's really anchored in the near-term future. It's really practical, and it doesn't get lost in speculation about what's going to happen in the year 3000. It's very practical, very optimistic. My biggest takeaway from this book is that it made me realize that I am not being ambitious or creative enough with my use of generative AI in my work and life. Like a lot of people, I was really dazzled by ChatGPT early on, but I couldn't see an immediate way to embed it into my workflow. It just wasn't obvious how to use it. And so I kind of just stopped paying attention to it. I just thought it was like another tech fad, like crypto or NFTs. But it turns out to make the best use of AI, you really have to use it a lot so that you can find ways to use it in your workflow. And I'm going to talk about some of the ways that I found that it's very useful. And that's actually a good intro to the first question. Practically, how can I use AI better? And I have to say, I'm definitely using it a lot more now. And actually, to script this video, what I did is I just recorded myself kind of stream of consciousness. I generated a transcript using Google's Recorder app, and then I gave ChatGPT the 5 questions, and I gave it my stream of consciousness transcript, and I told it to organize my thoughts as answers to the 5 questions. And that's largely how I structured this video. It did a very good job with that. And the reason I thought to do that was actually because of Ethan Mollick's first principle: always invite AI to the table. So what I'm finding after having done this for the past week is that AI seems to be really good at finding humanly intuitive relationships between different concepts. But if you ask it to make conclusions about those concepts, it does that in a very non-human, very unintuitive way. And for example, you can just think about asking it to write an essay. You can have it write something, and what it writes will be very compelling. It can make a lot of sense, and it can be very intuitive to a human reader. But then if you ask it to explain its thought process, it kind of falls apart there because it's not actually explaining its thought process. It's just looking at the text that's already been generated and generating a plausible explanation based on that text. And that's the part that's really unclear and unintuitive to most users. The other piece of practical advice that Ethan Mollick gave us is principle number 3, to treat AI like a person, but tell it what kind of person it is. It turns out that giving AI a role where you say, answer this question as a particular profession or as someone with a particular viewpoint, it can give you much better output because it's connecting the view of that person to the actual content of the text. And so it forces it out of the normal chain of thought that the average person might have because you're asking it to take on a particular persona. The other thing that I thought was interesting is something that Ethan Mollick mentioned briefly in Chapter 7, AI as a Tutor. He explained this idea of chain of thought prompting. And that's where you ask AI to explain its steps one at a time. And it seems like by doing this, you're kind of causing the AI to have like a more logical thought process. I wonder if this chain of thought prompting is going to be as useful with models like the new O1 model from ChatGPT that has a background thinking process. Question 2, how do you value the work of AI? And how do you value the work that is supplemented by AI? This is kind of an interesting question, and it reminds me a lot of the recent controversy around panels from MKBHD. Basically, if you're not familiar with what happened, he had put out this new app called Panels that does wallpaper for your phone, and a lot of people were upset because there's a lot of AI art in this paid wallpaper app. It turns out that wasn't really the whole story, because none of the art in there was completely generated by AI. All of the artwork that used AI was just using an AI overlay on top of existing work. And I think that might be the difference. There's value in the curation of AI content, but if you just use AI to generate something, it's not really that interesting. And I would also say that there's value in you're a really good photographer and you take a really interesting picture, and then if you decide to enhance it with AI in some way, and you carefully choose how that AI is applied, I do think that's valuable, because there's a lot of thoughtfulness that went into it. You're not just using AI for the sake of the hype. You're actually trying to make something that's interesting and compelling to people. I think the level of care that someone takes in using AI is the differentiating factor. Are they using it to just put something out there, or are they using AI to enhance the experience for the consumer of that art or the consumer of that work? I think that's a key difference. Question 3. How does AI change the truth? And this is an interesting one, because essentially what we learned in the book is that AI is kind of optimized for believability rather than for factuality. Is factuality even a word? I don't know. I think the important takeaway for this question is you have to think about responsibility. If you put out work to a client that is factually incorrect and the client calls you out on it, blaming the AI isn't going to work. You can't just say, oh, well, that's what the AI generated. That's not going to fly. At the end of the day, it's your responsibility to make sure the work that you put out is factually accurate. You always have to be critical of AI's output and understand the difference between the believability and the actual truth. So that means the onus is on all of us to be very critical of AI's output and make sure that the final product, whether that's directly from AI or modified for accuracy, it's important for us to make sure that the final output is what is actually the truth. Now, I don't think we got a solid answer to the question of deepfakes and misinformation. I don't think anyone really knows that answer, including Ethan Mollick, but it's not a reason to try and slow down the progress of AI or to necessarily change what we're doing. Question 4, how does AI change us? And I had a lot of thoughts on this one, and my thoughts are kind of in two parts. One is on the career part and one is on the human part. On the career part, I would say that right now it's easy for people to sort of want to just outsource a task completely to an AI, when that's probably not the best way to use it. It's better to use it in tandem with your own thinking. So maybe have it generate a first draft that you edit, or maybe have it give suggestions on something that you've written. That's a better way to use it than just having it generate something and you just use that without any sort of critical review. I think in the future, the top performing people at organizations are going to be people who are good at using AI, and they're also going to be people who would succeed without AI. So they're going to be people who are experts in their own field, but they're able to leverage AI to make themselves even better. And I think the challenge for people in the near future is going to be figuring out how to master the use of AI in their specific industries, because its usefulness isn't always clear, because there are some things that it's obviously very good at and other things where you think it should be good, but it's not. That's the whole concept of the jagged frontier that Ethan Mollick mentioned earlier. So now that we kind of have the career question out of the way, the more human side is a little bit more complicated. We spent a lot of time talking about AIs as companions. We talked about Replica, that's the sort of AI companion app. We talked about Eliza. These are all examples, I think, of people seeing the human in the AI. Because AI is so good at mimicking human interaction and human behavior, I think someone who's in a space of looking for connection, looking to find someone to talk to, I think it's really easy to find that person in AI, because they know the AI isn't going to judge them. They know it's a safe space. And at the same time, they're getting these really high quality answers out of the machine. It's really easy for them to feel connected to that. And I think we might see a surge in AI relationships. And from a mental health perspective, that could be challenging. But staying on the human side of things, I do think AI can be really useful as a coach and or a therapist. And the reason I say that is because AI can be very creative. It can find a lot of alternative ways of looking at a situation. It can come up with a lot of alternative approaches for tackling a problem. Just for a concrete example, say I'm having a problem with a coworker who's being very critical of what I'm putting out. Like, I could talk to an AI who could give me alternative interpretations of the facts. They could tell me maybe it's good that the coworker cares enough to give you that feedback. Or maybe the coworker is trying to help, but they just don't know how to deliver it well. Or maybe that coworker just went through a bad breakup. These are all empowering interpretations of the situation. So just to wrap up on how AI is going to change us, I think there's a lot of potential in how we deliver work using AI. There's a lot of potential in AI giving us a more holistic view of the way we work with our colleagues and how we navigate relationships in our lives. But I do think there are risks with actually using AI as a companion itself. And that brings us to our final question, question 5. We know AI isn't human intelligence, but what kind of intelligence is it? And with regards to this question, I do like the way Ethan Mollick structured this book, because right at the beginning he talks about AI as an alien intelligence and what that means for us. And knowing that AI is sort of this connection machine, that you can use that fact to give it a role and really steer it in the right direction is incredibly powerful. And again, I will mention this for the last time, the jagged frontier was a really interesting concept because it's so true that ChatGPT will do a task and it'll do it really well, and then you will give it an adjacent task and it will be absolute crap at that thing. And that's very strange. But the concept of the jagged frontier really helped me kind of understand the best way to navigate it. And because now we've learned that just outsourcing to AI isn't always the best approach, what you should do is to leverage Principle 4 to always be the human in the loop. I think that's the best way to make sure that you can steer AI in the right way. Whew, that was a lot. I'm so glad we read Co-Intelligence by Ethan Mollick. It really helped me understand how AI is going to impact our lives in the near-term future, and it really put the fire in me to figure out how to use it better, to explore its use cases and all the different ways it can help me in my life. Now, if you read the book, please go down in the comments and let me know what you thought. Are you going to use AI differently? Are you thinking about it in a new way? And let me know if you had a favorite part of the book. Those are all things I'd like to know about. But before you go, we do have one important item to address. What book are we reading next? For this one, I want to do something a little bit different. We're going to read The Third Door, The Mindset of Success by Alex Banayan. It looks like it's going to be a more narrative book, so that's why it's a bit of a departure from the norm here at Busy Book Club. But I'll give it a more formal introduction tomorrow. I'll see you then.